Right. Good morning. So this is on to the Bible and evolution, the fifth session. And for this fifth session, we are looking at the Bible and evolution. It's about time. We're looking at this whole concept of evolution, depending on uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism tells us that the present, that means now, is the key to the past, which is to say you observe the events that happen now and we assume, okay, so there you see they make assumption, but then they don't admit it. They say it's scientific. They assume that all these events occur at the same rate of change. And what rate is that? It's a very gradual rate of change, as they have always done. So whatever is happening very slowly now is the same thing that has been happening all along. That's what uniformitarianism is about. And we see that the critical linchpin of evolution, therefore, is time. So the linchpin is the screw, something like the screw that connects everything all together. That's the linchpin. And so for evolution, all the things that connect together to make evolution is about time. Geologic processes, when we talk about uniformitarianism, things that happen at the same gradual rate of change, the geologic processes, all the things that happen, these processes of change, they take time. And based on this very slow tortoise rate of change, the evolutionists therefore calculate. So this one is based on calculation, but the calculation is based on their assumption that everything has always been the same rate. So their calculation is that we must have, or our planet must have been around millions, and the whole universe would be billions of years. But okay, that is what they believe. But in actual truth and reality, in contrast, we see that the eruptions of Mount St Helens, we have seen that Mount St Helens actually erupted 3 times over a very short period of a year or so. The eruptions of Mount St Helens show that catastrophes do happen. In contrast to uniformitarianism, catastrophes may not happen frequently. Like uniformitarianism is like your daily life, very slow pace. But once in a while, there's some eruption in your life, right? Not everything is smooth all the time. So you can imagine it's like catastrophe. Yes, so catastrophes happen, but not frequently. But when they do, they cause changes to take place very rapidly in a short time. And it takes catastrophes like Mount St Helens. Not all catastrophes will show you what Mount St Helens shows, but catastrophes on the scale of Mount St Helens dramatically cut short the very slow and gradual geologic processes of change, so that whatever is taking a slow tortoise rate of change will now be compressed, and a lot of things happen very fast in a short time, like what the global flood did, and that is transform the earth dramatically in a very short time. Simple little picture, like the trees of Mount St Helens, the forests. Yes, because of the eruption, the trees were all denuded. They lost all their leaves, they lost all their branches, and they all were knocked down and like matchsticks. And so you see that the landscape has changed. It becomes very different, no longer like a forest, green, lush and beautiful. Now it looks like a moonscape, everything all dry and you see very dull color. Yeah, and this picture was taken just 2 days, May 20th, 1980. So a catastrophe changes a landscape, changes the earth very fast. changes geologic processes in a very short time. And we see that the Mount St. Helens events only needed hours and months to form the same features found in sedimentary rocks around the world. Yes, and you see, the thing is, a lot of these things that we find, they're actually in sedimentary rocks. They're not in other kinds of rocks. Because why? There are layers that they build up. And common features between Mount St. Helens and other places around the world include all this sharp, flat contacts between layers. Yeah, something similar to this. Flat rock layers below. You can see this picture here. Yeah, they're all very flat. We also have larger particles toward the bottom of a rock bed. This one not very obvious, but you can still see that the layers on top, they're thinner compared to the ones below. Cross beds, and then we have steep walled canyons. So if you take a look at this picture here at the top, this is a little Grand Canyon formed at Mount St. Helens. Little because it's a small version, and it's an aerial photograph, and you can see all these little channels. They would be the gullies as well as the river systems, okay, the creeks and all that that have been changed because of the catastrophe. So you have steep walled canyons, you have drainage systems, the rivers and the creeks and all that will find a new channel, and then material moved far away before becoming part of new rocks. So all the mud flows and whatever not, the rocks, everything all together with water and ice, they will cause the rocks to be washed out and brought to new places. Delimbed, sorted, and reburied rocks. So we have a picture. It's not easy to have a logs, sorry, not rocks, logs, reburied logs that sink to the bottom. At first, they float at the top of the water, the lake, in this case, Spirit Lake at Mount St. Helens. At first, they float. They are called vertical floaters. So you have upright one and you have the prone floating log. And then over time, the root absorbs water, becomes heavier. So it sinks down to the bottom and it becomes an upright deposited log. And sometimes it sinks down, but otherwise it becomes upright deposited logs. And this is where they will form fossils, which we will look at another time. Okay, then we have volcanic ash mixed with mud and hardened into rock. So all these features found at Mount St. Helens are very common around the world. Okay, and so that actually suggests there is a similar fate for all of them, and that was the flood of Noah. So we see Mount St. Helens shows that rock layers can form fast, and it shows Noah's flood could have produced enormous rock stacks in just 1 year. The flood of Noah was 1 year. And we don't need long ages to solidify sediments. We don't need them to settle down and dry up and become hard. We don't need millions of years for that to happen. So you may ask the question, but what about the age dating schemes? You know, the scientists and the people have said that, oh, we do the dating process and we found that this is how many millions of years old. What about that age dating scheme that supposedly prove all these millions and billions of years? Within 6 years of the eruption at St. Helens, a new lava dome in the crater at the top of Mount St. Helens had hardened, and standard radioisotope methods pointed to an isotopic age of around 350,000 years, when actually the rock was 10 years old. Can you do a comparison and see? The rock at Mount St. Helens was only 10 years old, but then scientists used their methods and give you a date of 350,000 years. You can see how 10 years become 350,000 years is a very huge difference. And the mistake is incredible, right? So the evidence of Mount St Helens reveals that the highly regarded radioisotopic dating methods are broken. They are no longer reliable as far as we can see for ourselves now, because we actually have something that we know when it formed 10 years ago versus the date they give us for the aging, and they tell us is so many years. Okay, so the methods have been proven to be wrong. And this made, or the dating has been wrong. This made Noah's recent flood that much more sensible now, because it won't be in terms of like so many super number of years ago. And it stands to reason that if rock layers formed fast, then the time, instead of the uniformitarianism or so long, the time can now be compressed, shortened. Then the earth can be only thousands of years old. And that's not enough for fish to evolve into people. That means that's not enough for evolution of animals in the water to come onto the land and then to evolve into everything and become people in the end. Okay, so Earth is only thousands of years old. Here's a picture of the lava dome formed between 1980 and 1986. And samples from this newly formed rock, like I said just now, they were dated and they gave a 350,000 years old date, with some minerals at 2.4 million years old. How incredible is the difference, right? 10 years became 2.4 million years for some of the minerals. So that definitely shows that the time dating is far inaccurate. Okay, so we have examples of wrong dating. I'm not going to go through. First of all, this is very blur, right? Sorry for the picture turning up blur. But these are examples of wrong dating, okay? And an example could be, let me just shoot you one. Mount Garuho, okay? Sorry, cannot pronounce this name. Known to be less than 50 years old. But when they tried dating it, they gave 3 different ages for the rocks. One is 133 million years. Compare your 50 years to 133 million years. Another one was 197 million years. I'm looking at the bottom right. Okay. And then the third date they gave was 3.908 billion years. Can you imagine? What we know for sure, because it happened in recent years, 50 years old, the last picture on the bottom right. They dated in millions and billions of years. So that clearly shows that the dating for a lot of all these old stuff is very unreliable and inaccurate. So new evidence has recently been discovered that this can only be explained by something called radioactive decay rates, and they were not having not been constant in the past. Okay, I'm not going to go through this, it's quite technical, so just point out a little bit of the things that help us to see. For example, they have this uranium lead age of 1.5 billion years. Okay, but when they actually found out more, only 6,000 years worth of that helium was found to have leaked out of the tiny crystals. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just this highlighted box here. If these clocks are based on faulty assumptions and yield unreliable results, then scientists should not trust or promote the claimed radioactive ages. That's the point of this whole dating thing. Yeah, they're actually unreliable because at different timing, you can get a different figure. So we have an applicational problem here. And that is the standard radioisotope methods that they use to date samples of the 10-year-old rock and minerals at Mount St Helens and date them in hundred thousands of years and millions of years, shows the dating system is inaccurate and unreliable. And it indicates obviously that the dating we have been given for many things are wrong. Okay, so if you talk in terms of the relevance, such a situation throws into confusion. Now we are all confused because the accuracy of all those datings of geological formations, mountains, canyons, rocks, fossils, and so on, the accuracy now cannot be trusted. Yeah, they are supersizing the duration.
Yeah.
Yet people will continue to use and believe the erroneous dates. You see, people will still continue to use all these dates. Oh, this is a 1 million years old. Oh, the trees in this forest are 500,000 years old, etc. And they will continue to use these wrong dates through ignorance. Many people won't know. Or those who know simply because they have no other accurate dates or dating method to use. So you see, they'll continue to use the wrong ones. And for those who know, they'll just continue to use, and everybody happily takes it that that is correct, scientific, but it is scientifically wrong. And so it is easy to simply continue using something long established, whether it's, the geologic columns that we looked at one of the earlier sessions, the dating of so many things, is continue to use all those datings and all that, but they're wrong, even though they have been used from day one, perhaps. Because why? There's now nothing to fall back on. And what happens is it perpetuates error. The mistakes and the wrong continues to be carried on and added on more and more. But not many people are aware of this problem. And so we think that the dates given of millions years and so on are accurate. Okay, so before we leave this topic of Mount St Helens, which has given us many lessons and many things to realize, we can say that the eruption of Mount St Helens has given us a landmark mountain. Something very useful because it's within our lifetime to observe and to know. In its aftermath, amid the rivers of mud, blankets of ash, and much more, scientists made a startling discovery. Nature was bringing life out of death, reclaiming from the destruction a teeming colony of plant and animal life. That's to say, even though, the mountain was destroyed, the landscape was destroyed, the trees, the forest, everything all gone, and even the fish in the spirit lake all died. Most amazingly, these geological upheavals, okay, also recreated the processes of old that had carved out such marvels as the Grand Canyon. Okay, so they have very amazing landforms, but at the same time, after years, plant life and animal life came back. Plant life and animal life came back. And so here's the first photograph at the top. Can see burnt coniferous forest regenerating following the eruption. And this photograph was taken in August 2006, which is to say about 26 years later. 26 years after the eruption, you can see that the plant life is growing back. Yes, and then the picture at the bottom, elk on the landslide deposit, other animals like elk and squirrels, land animals are all coming back. So today, this site stands as a testament to the power of God who upholds all of creation. After a catastrophe, life can still come back. In God's infinite wisdom, he has shown the modern science of geology given us today that the earth is much, much younger than previously thought or taught. So for years, many people have settled with the idea that evolution is the correct scientific explanation for our existence, our planet and our animal and especially our own human existence. Many people have become used to the idea that evolution is the correct scientific explanation. But when it comes to Christians, there may be many who cannot give an answer to evolution. And so they begin to either believe that the Bible account of creation is untrue because they believe this thing about evolution, what people say about evolution. So they compare with the Bible and say, oh, Bible creation is not right, wrong. Or else they will try to reinterpret the literal 24 hours for 24-hour days, one day being 24 hours for them, they will now reinterpret as millions of years. Yeah, according to Uniformitarianism. So they will do that in a way to fit the ideas of evolution into the Bible. So you get evolution now going into the Bible. And then they conclude that God must have created the world over long geologic periods of time, that God took millions and millions of years to actually create all those things that the Bible says happen in 6 days. And those Christians who cannot reconcile this idea, whatever not about evolution with the Bible story in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, they end up either doubting in divine creation that God made everything, or they lose faith in a creator God. And that was what happened, if you remember, at our very first lesson on evolution. We had this man called Charles Templeton, right? He was one of the founders of a very good Christian ministry of evangelism with Billy Graham, and he lost his faith. Unfortunately, the science at that time, right, was not available to him to know all these truths. And so he lost his faith unnecessarily. Yeah, so Christians can lose their faith because they cannot settle this whole concept of evolution or long geologic periods of creation, or even did God create at all. But the good news for us today is with increasing advances in Christian research, and we still have time. You see, it's all about time. A big chunk of all these things is about time. Yeah, with increasing advances in Christian research and the scientific evidence of catastrophes like Mount St Helens, excuse me, within our lifetime, we are now in a stronger position to examine and verify the truth of God's word about creation, so that we also can come up with a science-based, and not just science, but also logic, because some of the things really you need to apply your logic. Science-based foundation for our faith. So that gives us a lot of certainty now, yeah, that we are not just believing in something that is what people now look at as figurative, trying to make a point, but that's not the true what happened, not the true event. So now we know they are true because there's actually scientific and logic-based truth available for us in modern research. So to start it off, we want to just explore very briefly the positions on creation, right? People talk about creation. What do they really mean, or what do they believe when they talk about creation? Or what does it mean when people talk about evolution? Okay. Start off with creation. What is creationism? Well, Charles Darwin was the first person to use the term creationism. It came about in response to his publication of On the Origin of Species. So his book, yes, and the consequent emergence of the theory of evolution, where he observed, on the Galapagos Islands, he observed how the little birds and other animals, their adaptations, right? Over time, there were changes in the beak, there were changes in certain parts of their features. And so he talked about this whole thing that animals must have evolved. But really, they were talking about adaptation, where they just make changes to fit in with survival for their environment. But they do not turn from bird to, let's say, for example, a horse or something like that. They don't turn into a different animal. Okay, so creationism is the position that God created the universe and life, living things and non-living things. In an 1856 letter, Charles Darwin coined the term creationists to refer to the people who believe the biblical account of creation instead of the concept of evolution. So you have the first concept, creationism, that is belief that God created the universe, God created life. Creationists will be the people who believe the Bible is true about creation. So creationism, the belief that the universe and living organisms originate from specific acts of divine creation. Okay, so they try to be more inclusive. They talk about divine creation. They don't necessarily say it is God. Okay, so you see people try to avoid God by talking about somebody else, perhaps. Okay, but anyway, the belief that life came from divine creation, just like the Bible account, rather than by natural processes or evolution or uniformitarianism of evolution. So creation science will be the interpretation, how we interpret scientific knowledge to match with the belief in the literal truth of the Bible, especially regarding the origin of things, matter, life, and particularly human beings, humankind. So this is the first thing about what people believe, creationism. And we have variations. Not everybody believes the same thing about creation. You see, people can be so diverse and have so many different opinions. So you have variations in creationist beliefs. And so for all the different beliefs, we just talk about two main groups, okay? Two main groups. Young Earth creationism, and this group takes a literal interpretation. That means what the Bible says is what the Bible means of the creation story in Genesis. They believe that the earth and even the whole universe is less than 10,000 years old. Compared with evolution scientists, they believe the earth to be about 4.5 billion years old. So a huge difference you can see in the two figures, just like what we saw when we had Mount St Helens dome and minerals dated. Very huge difference in the dating. All life was created during the 6 days of creation, exactly as it is today. All right, so that's the first main group of creationist belief. The Bible is literal and the meaning is literal. God really took 6 days to create, and just 6 days, not a long time. Second group is Old Earth creationism. And this group believes that the universe and everything in it was created by God, but the description in Genesis is figurative. Okay, it is a way of making a point. That's what they mean. rather than literal. And this was done in 6 days of a long period of time rather than 6 actual 24-hour days. And so this group of old Earth creationism, they may accept the findings of geologists and astronomers. So geologists will be those people who study planet Earth, the features of Earth, geography of Earth. Astronomers will be those who study space and planets and so on. So this group of old Earth creationism believers can accept the findings concerning the age of the Earth and the universe, but they don't believe that biological evolution took place. Okay, so for them, life was created by God exactly as it is today in the beginning. So this old Earth creationism people, there are variations of them. One group believe, yes, it took ages for God to create planet Earth, but when it comes to life, biological evolution, they don't believe that part. So you can believe all these things, but does it really make sense? We will take a look at this later today. But here's another group, Theistic Evolution. This theistic means it comes from God. And so this group believes in the account of God's creation as compatible. Okay, so for them, it is okay, it is perfectly all right that God created, and it is actually through evolution, including life. Okay, so as compared to just now, old Earth creationism, they stop short when it comes to life. They says life, no, God did not cause life to come about through evolution. But here is this group, theistic evolutionists, who believe that yes, God created everything in over long periods of time, and where life is concerned, God also used long periods of time to evolve the animals and human beings. Okay, so this is theistic evolution. And so the supporters of theistic evolution, they generally will harmonize evolutionary beliefs with belief in God. So they say the science of evolution is what God used to create life and everything else. And this is a way for them where they can avoid the seeming contradiction between the Bible and evolutionary science. So we can all be happy. Yeah, we can be happy with our Bible, and we can be happy with evolutionary science and take it that, okay, we can all believe God and accept everything. So some argue that God used these evolutionary processes to create life and human beings. So for them, there's no conflict, no problem. So basically, when we think about this situation, what does it mean? All Earth creationists, they are interpreting the Bible through the world. That means what the world says, what people says in the world, all right? They use that to now look at the Bible and say, okay, let me explain the Bible in this way, what people say and what people claim about science. And therefore, the Bible must have been like that actually. So therefore, creation story becomes figurative. It's just to make a certain point, but it's not saying that that is really what happened. That's all Earth creationists. Then you have the other group, young Earth creationists, and this group interprets the interprets the world through the Bible. That means they start with the Bible to say, okay, the Bible tells me how I can understand the world. Okay, so you have the basic difference here in depending on what you believe, okay, what you are doing with the Bible. That is the bottom line. So let's explore this concept of theistic evolution, the view that God created the world and then God let it evolve with very limited involvement. Okay, God just set the wheels moving and God just watch everything move. So God doesn't touch creation because he just sets the things in motion and everything will just start evolving over time. And this is an attempt to reconcile God and evolution. Now, is this theory compatible with the Bible? That's a very important question. So if you don't really think about the implications, it seems an easy and correct way to actually reconcile both, right? God, creation, and evolution. So they are saying creation through evolution. So is it true, theistic evolution? Let's take a look. Nothing in the Bible indicates that God created the world through the evolutionary process. There's nothing to show that. Take a look at Exodus chapter 31, verse 16 and 17. The Israelites are to celebrate the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he abstained from work and rested. Nehemiah 9 verse 6, you alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all the starry host, and the earth, and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. So you see, this is quite complete. The heavens, you have space, and the starry host, so you have the stars and the planets and so on, and planet Earth, the land, and then you have the seas. A pretty complete description. God made them. You give life to everything, and the multitudes of heaven worship you. So even it talks about multitudes of heaven, so that would include the angels. Yes, so that's a very inclusive, big statement, overarching statement. And both Exodus 31 and Nehemiah 9:6, the way it is written, it doesn't give us the idea that there was an evolutionary process of a long, long time. Yeah, it just states something as simple and literal. It is not so complicated to put in concept of ages. Okay, so we come now to this concept of day age. Okay, is 1 day of creation equal to an age of years? Okay, geologic process of many, many millions or billions of years. So there is this term called day age theory. This theory is an attempt to reconcile Genesis 1 and 2 with evolution, the story of creation, to say that it is true evolution. And this theory states that the days of creation were actually ages. Okay, so it can range from millions of years to billions of years. So when we think about it practically, what it really implies or means, there are two possible ways to look at this concept of a day when you say ages. Yeah, the first concept of day to be a long day, that's what they are actually meaning, is number one, as one super long continuous day that lasts the equivalent of billions of years, that evolutionists say it needs for things to evolve, things and life to evolve. Okay, so if we look at it as just 1 day only, the first day of creation, second day of creation, each of these days is just one super long unending day, which is the equivalent of billions of years. Okay, you got that? It's just 1 day. That means 1 day, 1 night. And that day is like billions of years, that kind of amount of time. And the night is also that billions of years, that amount of time. So that's one way to interpret a long, long day. Okay. Then the second day is that one day is actually not one day. It's actually many, 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 many days. Okay. That will therefore last a geologic age. So literally speaking, it's not one day. It's an age of a geologic age of perhaps billions of years. And so that means 1 year is 365 days, right? So that would be 1 year multiplied by, because this is days as countless of days. So 365 days for 1 year multiplied by the billions of years that you talk about. If you say Earth is 4.5 billion years, right, old, then it will be 365, which is 1 year, multiplied by 4.5. That kind of number of days. 1 day is actually that many days. Okay, you understand the two concepts of a long day, okay, that becomes a geologic age, either through just one day, that's super, super long, or it's actually made up of little days. Okay, so there are two ways. Let's explore these two concepts. What is the practical implication? Okay, because it's very easy to say, oh, it's actually one super long day, or one billion years, that kind of thing. But let's think of practical implication. What would it mean on Earth at that time? Okay, what would it mean on Earth at that time if Earth is one super, super, super long day when God created? So the first interpretation, day is a super long continuous day. The day doesn't end until the time of billions of years is over. Now, science tells us this. If the Earth rotated at half its current speed, that means the time is actually moving very slow. Correct? The day is actually moving very slow. So if the day is one super long day, that means the time is moving very slowly for it to last billions of years, that kind of equivalent. So if the Earth, let's take an example, rotated at half its current speed, so it slows down to half the speed that it rotates now. Half its current speed of 1,037 miles per hour at the equator. You know the Earth spins, right? It rotates. Then the days would be longer. Okay, if it spins more slowly, then the days will be longer. That is how you can get a very long day. So let's, as an example, if a day were just 48 hours long compared to our 24 now, that means half the time, spinning at half the rate, okay? Plants on the sunny side of the planet would dry up during the day. That means your daytime is now 24 hours, not, I take it as half day, half night, half 12, right? So if you multiply that day now to be the length of 2 days, okay, that means the day would last 24 hours, the night will last 24 hours, and that makes up a 48-hour day, which is a longer day. Okay, so where the part of the planet gets the sun for 24 hours, it will actually dry up the plants. Too long, 24 hours a day will dry up the plants, especially in hotter regions, and then lakes will begin evaporating faster, double the speed that we are experiencing now, and animals will die of heat exhaustion because they are exposed to the sun for 24 hours in the daytime. And if it's hotter times of the year, people could only survive in air-conditioned shelters because 24 hours the heat will be unbearable unless you are in aircon. But remember, this is day of creation, there's no aircon. That means what does it mean about human beings? They won't survive. Also, if you talk about nights being twice as long, that means 24 hours now, the night side of planet Earth would grow very cold. And it will make it necessary to stay warm for the remainder of the night once the heat of the day was gone. Okay, so the signs of a long day above, if you now say it's not it's not 48 hours. 48 hours is just an example. So if you say it's one super long continuous day that lasts billions of years, that means the daytime would be 1 billion years long at least, right? And if you have a daytime that's 1 billion days long, everything will dry up. Human beings would die. So if you imagine the science of a long day, what happens here just happens in the 48-hour day. Imagine these effects when the day is one super long continuous day, like an age of billions of years. What would happen? God can create, but the life would not survive on earth. The end. Yeah, end of the story. No need to talk about creation anymore. No more life. And so this is, if the earth rotated more slowly so that you get a longer day, there's another very important thing. Our magnetic field would grow weaker as well. Because you see, the speed of Earth's rotation is what causes the solid inner and liquid outer cores of the planet. Remember, the Earth is not one solid all the way through. Inside it has got a melted magnetic core of the stuff inside there. Okay, so the rotation is supposed to rotate like a dynamo. Yeah, and the speed at which they do is what generates the strength of the magnetic field of the planet Earth, and that affects gravity as well. Okay, so if it spins more slowly, like to accommodate an age of billions of years, a weaker magnetic field, very slow now, super slow, would allow more radiation to reach the surface of the Earth. And that would bring in a corresponding increase in damage, because now the radiation that manages to reach planet Earth, reach us, is a lot greater, multiplied by billions of times what is happening now. And the damage to the environment will also damage us. Okay, so you have one super long, just one day that lasts for so long until it's billions of years, that kind of time. What's the conclusion we get? All life and man would not survive a super long day age creation of this kind. So you think of the implication, you see it's easy to believe, but when it comes to what does it actually happen on the ground, it is not tenable. This is not something that could be true. Okay, then we look at the second interpretation of a day is actually a geologic age of many little 24-hour days, and this whole lot, which means it's not a day lah, it's actually days and days and days. Okay, days and days hidden inside one day, in this kind of interpretation. So what they use in the Bible is 2 Peter 3:8 to justify, okay, to try to support them. 2 Peter 8 says, but do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. So they use this verse from the Bible, they try to use Bible to support them and say one day is actually equal to 1,000 years. Okay? If this one day is 1,000 years in the same way like just now, then we saw how all life on earth would perish already. But if let's say take this one day is actually one day, 24 hours, okay, like today, but this 24 hours is actually many days until it forms 1,000 years, fitting into one day of creation. So you interpret one day of creation as actually 1,000 years. Okay? Okay, so we can talk about the meaning and interpretation of the word day in Hebrew. In Hebrew, just like for us in English, the day can actually be interpreted into a literal 24-hour day, like today, okay? I want to see you today, 24-hour day, or period of time, like in the day of Moses, or in the day of Queen Elizabeth. She just died last year, right? But in the day of Queen Elizabeth is many years, right? She reigned for how many years? 70 years or so, right? I don't know the number, but in the day of Queen Elizabeth would be actually many years. Okay, yeah. So you can have a literal 24-hour day or a period of time, like in the day of Queen Elizabeth. Now, pro-evolution supporters will grasp at this latter meaning of day to be a period of time. However, there are two factors that show this is not what the verse has in mind. Okay, we can see that there are actually two things that shows this verse cannot be used to support that day of creation is actually like 1,000 years. Okay, so if you look at verse 9, okay, just now that was verse 8. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day, or I forgot to highlight this like. Okay, you look at verse 9, the Lord is not slow in keeping his promise as some understand slowness, talking about day and 1,000 years. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Verse 9 actually gives us the context of this passage. It's not exactly about time, it's about God's patience. It does not give the idea that a day can be interpreted as a long period of 1,000, or if you want 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 years, like a geologic age. It is actually trying to say that God's patience, okay, is very long. God is very what do you say? Long-suffering, a very patient God. He waits. He's prepared to give us time. Just like in Abraham's day, he told Abraham that the Amorites, okay, his people would be held captive in Egypt for 400 years before they go into Canaan and take over the land from the Amorites, because the sin of the Amorites has not reached full measure. So God gave 400 years to the Amorites. God gave them his patience of 400 years. And so down here, contrasting to that, where God gave a race of Amorites 400 years to repent, here God is giving mankind in general his patience so that he can wait 1,000 years for people to repent. Okay, he's patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. So this context is not exactly about time, it's about God's patience, saying that God's patience can last for a long, long time. Not saying that time is actually lasting 1,000 years. So the verse is actually also comparing 1,000 years to a day in a way to show that to God, time is nothing to him. He's prepared to wait. 1 day or 1,000 years, it is nothing to God. It is just an analogy. It is not saying that a day is actually 1,000 years. So that is misinterpreting. Okay, it's saying a day is similar in the sense that where God is concerned, 1 short day or a long 1,000 years for us, to God, it is nothing. What is important to God is repentance. So this passage cannot be used to support a day-age theory. Okay, a day is not 1,000 or you like 1,000,000 years or a geologic period. Okay, and you see, a day is very important because the concept of day affects a lot of important practical daily things. Yeah, so we cannot just, Chinese people say suka-suka, that as you wish, you start interpreting in this way and that way, because the real life meaning has huge implications. Okay, real life meaning has huge implications. You cannot just talk anything you like as your theory to support your belief. So we have day-age theory. The Bible says that God created all that exists in 6 days and rested on the 7th day. All right, so we have the 6 days of work and the 7th day of rest. Let's take a very quick look at what you probably know. Day 1, God created light and separated it from the darkness. Okay, so God created the heavens and the earth. So that means God created earth and space, right? And then after God created earth and space, on day one, God also created light and separated it from darkness. So that means planet Earth is there, okay? And God separated light and darkness, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Day two, God separated the expanse. There's water, so water above, water below, what is called Earth. So basically, it's God made the atmosphere of planet Earth. Okay, He made planet Earth with light and darkness, separated it from the rest of the universe. But for planet Earth, He made an atmosphere. There was evening, there was morning, second day, third day. And then God started to gather the waters. Remember just now there was water above the sky, water under the sky. So it is atmosphere. But what was on planet itself? Full of water. Full of water. So what did God do? God separated this water so that there is dry ground and there are seas. There are seas. Okay, so day three, two important aspects. God separated the water. So earlier on, that means the whole earth was full of water. And we know that planet Earth is it 75%? 75% of water that is on the surface of planet Earth. So the 75% at the day of creation, okay, actually covered the whole planet, and Earth was, the land was actually underneath the water. Okay, so God gathered the seas one side and God gathered the land another side. And that is where we have the concept of Pangaea. Remember what is Pangaea? Earth was actually one supercontinent. Okay, when God gathered the seas, the waters one side and the land one side, there was one supercontinent. And then after that, God made vegetation. God started making things grow on the land. Evening, morning, third day. So third day quite eventful. Fourth day created sun, moon, stars. Okay, because the vegetation need the sunlight and all that. And there was evening, morning, the fourth day. Then day 5, God created the water creatures and the birds. So water and then the sea. Then you have evening and morning, the 5th day. And then day 6, God created the land animals and then man. And you have evening and morning, the 6th day. And finally, you have day 7 when God rested from all His work of creation and made the day holy. Okay, so there you go. You have all the 7 days of the first week. 6 days got created, 7th day got rested. Move on. You notice after each day, from day 1 to day 6, and there was evening and there was morning, and the first day, second day, third day until 6th day. So there is this repeated pattern after each day of creation. And then day 7, God rested from all His work of creation and made the day holy. Day 7 is unique, different, okay? Holy. Remember what I said about holy, the simple meaning of holy? God made the day different, okay? Holy is different from all the 6 days before that. So observe, first of all, the reference to evening and morning at the end of each of the 6 days after God finished creating for that day. It appeals to a literal 24-hour time of evening and morning. Yeah, because in a geologic age, how to consider evening and morning? You have to interpret it very figuratively. The evening must be so many X years of the geologic billions of years. That is very complicated, very confusing, and we cannot determine when it's evening. Okay, so you have evening and morning, shows that it's actually a literal 24-hour day rather than an age. So here's the problem with our day-age theory interpretation, some more problems. Now, if a day during the days of creation is a long period of an age, so very obviously, you from what we have been describing, you can see we have this conflict. When does the day become a 24-hour day? Does it become a 24-hour day on the 7th day or on the 8th day? Or I put ... means or some other later time. When does God actually start having a 24-hour day for us? So besides all those problems that planet Earth cannot survive, planet Earth cannot survive and it doesn't make sense, okay, then we have to know when a day starts becoming 24 hours. And so the logical question, you see, we apply science, we must also apply logic. Science, if it's not logical, then it's not science. Why should it have this logic that only during the 7 days? Or is it 6 days? No, tell us. If you say it is a long period of creation, is it 7 days or is it 6 days? Tell us, how do you know? You mean God tell you in the only you? You know, is it 7 days or 6 days of creation? Is each day a long period of an age? And only after that, then everything becomes a 24-hour day that we know today. Right? So it's confusing. This logic looks like it's people trying to dictate their own meaning of a day into the days of creation. And it's confusing because we don't have something consistent. So it makes more sense to be consistent and regard a day as a normal 24-hour day. Unless there is clear indication in the Bible context for it to be understood as a day of a long era, like the day of Queen Elizabeth, then we know that will be 70 years perhaps, or 80 years and so on. Let's not read meaning into the Bible account to fit our own justification. You know, want to manipulate it to fit evolution or manipulate it to fit my own timetable and so on. Furthermore, in Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11, the Bible clearly means the days of creation to refer to 24-hour days. Okay, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You're not to do any work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now it's obvious that God is created from here. It's obvious that God created over 24-hour days because he tells his people to do the same thing on their work days. You know, 6 days you shall labor and then rest on the 7th day. So if one day is a geologic age, we don't live that long. How are we going to work 6 days of geologic ages just like God? Before the first day is over, we're dead. Nobody lives that long, right? Okay, so it just, see, Bible, interpret Bible, it just makes sense that it is a 24-hour day because God is telling his people, imitate me, do the same thing. I work on 6 days, you work on 6 days. I rest on the Sabbath, you rest on the Sabbath. Yeah, God is telling them to do what he is doing. Then again in Exodus 31, God told Moses to tell the Israelites the important necessity of observing the Sabbath, and it shows once again it's a 24-hour day. The Israelites have to observe the Sabbath for a lasting covenant, a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth. 7th day he rested and was refreshed. So once again, God calls his people, observe 7th day as a Sabbath, and they imitate him to work 6 days, rest on the 7th day as a covenant between them and God. And so both are 24-hour days, not periods of years. Now, then we have more questions, okay? Some people may be curious. God has the power to create the heavens and the earth. If you say God is very powerful, okay, he can create heavens and earth, then why does he need an age to create through evolution what he can create in one day? See, it doesn't make sense. If God is powerful to create, why must he create through one age using evolution? He can just create. One day means one day and all these things. No need to evolve. So Psalm 33, 6 to 9, By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, their starry host by the breath of his mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea into jars. He puts the deep into storehouses. And I would suggest to you that the deep after the flood, the deep caused the flood to come, and he put into storehouses, right? Okay, and after the flood, he put them into the storehouses that are the glaciers and the ice shelves. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the people of the world revere him, for he spoke and it came to be. God created by speaking. He commanded and it stood firm. Another verse, Isaiah 45:12, tells us God also used his hands to stretch out the heavens. So God created by using his word and by his own hands, which would be figurative. He stretched out the heavens, just like it's putty or plasticine. He can stretch out. Okay, so God is powerful enough to simply speak and stretch out the heavens with his hands. I would think that this part here is figurative. Okay, but you want to put it literal, God stretch out with his hands like, okay, that's fine. He does not need an age to create on each day. Okay, on each day, he doesn't need an age. So next question, since God has the power to create the heavens and the earth, why doesn't he create everything in one day instead of 6 days? Compress everything now, do everything, like us Singaporeans, so kiasu, or the world now, everything must do super fast and finish efficiency. Why not one day instead of 6 days and a day of rest? Also, is it because God has limited power, so he needs to rest after creating 6 days? So we can answer these questions when we look at both. First of all, what God talks about the seventh day. Okay, God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Genesis 2 verses 2 and 3, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So it was to make it holy. And the idea is carried on to his people about the seventh day. Remember the seventh day, keep it holy. 6 days, labor, do your work. Seventh day, Sabbath to the Lord. Okay, he rested. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So what God was actually doing is setting an example or precedent for his people. God is asking his people to do what he does. In other words, imitate him. That's what the whole idea of the Bible in our relationship with God is. Imitate him. So from the very first act of creation, God is telling us, I want you to imitate me right from the very beginning. Work on 6 days, observe the Sabbath as a rest, and to honor God. It's a covenant. And spend time observing their relationship with him. So it is meant to be a day of covenant observance. Rest as well as covenant observance. Okay, so in his creation, what God was doing in that first week of creation, God was preparing the grounds for his people to do as he did. So it's not that God's power is limited. He was doing it for the benefit of his people. And that's why at the end of 6 days, he looked at everything he had created in 6 days, Genesis 1:31, and says it was very good. Very good for what? For people. Okay, God established the laws of science. God established the work duration, 6 days and a day of rest, Sabbath, and it was all very good for people. What God had created over the 6 days and the Sabbath day was for the benefit of people, because unlike God, man is limited in power and needs rest. You see, God doesn't need the rest. It is the people of God who need the rest. And it is the people of God who need to set aside the time to maintain focus on God. Okay, not just to rest in him, but also to celebrate and observe their purposes according to his good will for them as his people. See, God is a very good God from Genesis 1:31, because of all the thought he put into his creation and what he did and then told his people to do. It is simply that people don't properly understand God and his plans or his destiny for us. Okay, so that is the problem. It is not a problem with God, it's a problem with us understanding. And you want to see that God doesn't need rest. Somebody turn quickly to Psalm 121. I'm running out of time. Psalm 121 verses 3 and 4. Please help us to read if you have found it. Psalm 121 verses 3 and 4.
Yeah, I read. Psalm 121 verse 3. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will not slumber nor sleep.
Thank you. Okay, then verse 5, the Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. Verse 6, the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night, because God made it so that it will not be too hot or too cold. See how good God is? So Psalm 121 shows us God doesn't need that rest. The rest is for us, and the rest is also for us to remember where we come from. We come from God, okay? And remember that God has his purposes for us. And so therefore, the Sabbath day is for us to observe God's purposes, to learn and to do what God wants for our good, for our own good destiny. Okay, I have a lot more to go, but I'm out of time. So next week, I will cover the gap theory. Okay, some of you who have heard of it, you know what it means. It means that between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, people, not everybody, think that there is a problem there, a gap of something inside there. So I will do that next week because we're out of time today. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your goodness, for your faithfulness to us. We thank you, God, that you are a God who gives us great plans. You have done great things and you have got great plans for us. And we pray, Heavenly Father, Lord, that we will exercise that faith, even though we do not know everything, and especially we do not know the mechanics of how you created and did such marvelous things in creation. But you have certainly got all your purposes, your reasons, and your plans for us so that we are able to embrace them as well as to benefit from them based on our obedience and trust in you. We give you thanks because you are such a good God to us. We pray and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.